big changes are on the way when we look at the potential for snow over the next couple of days from the central U.S. to the east. We're going to look at that too. We're going to break down the detail, the probabilities, and all of those interesting things that I think are interesting. Hey, if you're new to the channel, I'm on the road today, so please forgive the format. If you're an OG, you've been here for a while, you've been a subscriber, usually I'm in the studio, as you know. But if you're brand new, thanks for coming by. I'm Travis. I used to be a chief meteorologist many, many years ago on television, and I enjoy this type of stuff, following the trends, looking at things. So I hope you'll consider subscribing and come back. We're going to dig into some of the details. I want to go back to the blended model data here because I think this might be giving us maybe a realistic picture of what could end up happening. It's got the snow all the way down into Oklahoma, as far north as Kansas, and then into Missouri. You start to see those higher numbers. Winter storm watches have been issued for some of these areas for up to 10 inches of snow in a few spots. So it gives you an idea maybe of what the National Weather Service is referencing here. If you go a little bit further to the east, I think that the data is still being shopped around for an official forecast. Some of the models are really hammering southeast Virginia into southern parts of Maryland and into southern New Jersey, and then even back into the Appalachians. Now, some of this is going to fall, especially up here into the mountains of West Virginia, with the snow that we're seeing this evening into tonight into early Monday morning. In fact, there are blizzard warnings for a few counties up here into western Maryland, winter storm warnings too for quite a bit of wind and snow, and it is super windy across the east as our low wraps up. And a lot of this snow up here into Ohio and Ontario is falling ahead of that system. This stripe to the south, though, that is the system that we're looking at that's going to be moving through next. There is some severe weather going through the early part of the day into the later part of the day as our front moves through. So from Florida all the way up into really almost New Jersey, there could be some strong damaging winds, some hail, and there's also the possibility that a few of these areas could see some tornadoes. It's a very low risk, but still, it's not a zero threat. The potential of seeing more than 6 inches of snow, this is the newest data that came in overnight on the European, highlighting a few areas, of course, right here in the southeast Virginia, but I'm interested in what's happening in North Carolina. Pretty wild to see it that far south. There's a lot of agreement. This takes the 51 different members. This is an average. And then you can see that stripe of snow back to the west. And really here across southern Missouri, also parts of Kansas and Oklahoma, and into northern Arkansas. Interesting to see it that far to the south. All right, let's take a look at things. We'll start off with Sunday evening. Let's go back a little bit further. I'm not sure when you're watching this. We'll start off with Sunday afternoon. We're going to have this snow lifting out of Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania too, after we see a quick flash freeze. That's going to be the interesting thing too, because temperatures are going to rapidly plummet, and that's going to cause some slick conditions as we head into the overnight, with that snow continuing and temperatures just going downhill. As we move into Monday, it's still going to be windy across the Northeast all the way back to the Great Lakes into the mid-Atlantic, with that cold northwest flow just surging that Arctic air in. And then some light snow starts to break out here across the plain states. Now, this really isn't going to be too heavy. We're going to hold off on the heavy snow at least until I think Monday night into Tuesday. It'll start to develop across Kansas, Oklahoma. There could be some mixed precipitation on the southern side of this into Oklahoma, and then this pushes east into Missouri. This is where the tricky part comes into play. I think the southern side of this, you're going to get some ice. So down to Little Rock, across northern Arkansas, and if you look back into Oklahoma, you can see that mix down to Oklahoma City, and then just rain into Texas. We could see some mix right along the Red River Valley, but heavy snow possible, I think, along the Kansas border, over to Missouri, southern Missouri, into Arkansas, that area right there just to the north into Missouri, likely seeing the heaviest snow with that mix into Arkansas, and then into Kentucky, Tennessee. Memphis at this point, it's so close where you see all snow or starting to see some mix. The idea on the GFS through last night is that you see kind of a mix over to snow, and then that heavy snow moving into Kentucky, Tennessee, western Virginia, and then for the rest of Virginia too, the western mountains of North Carolina, southern Ohio, and even into West Virginia, and then watch out into southeast Virginia as the coastal low takes shape. This was where we could see a lot of dynamic, interesting things happening, I guess, dynamically. Now the GFS, this is where we start to see some splits. So far, the European and the GFS are in pretty good alignment, but we're looking now at late Wednesday night into Thursday morning. Your upper low is still pretty far back across the Central Plains on the GFS. The European has a bit of a different story. I'm going to show you that in just a second. The GFS almost keeps it offshore. It still puts heavy snow into New Jersey, but it doesn't bring it up into New York City, into southern New England, although it does put some snow into these regions, at least the brunt of the snow, not here. This is a look at the European just for comparison. We're going to fast forward in time. Pretty good agreement, really, if you look at this through Monday and Tuesday. In fact, maybe this is some differences that we're starting to see. You start to see some splits as we head now into Wednesday. It's a little further south with the cold air. That's a snowier solution for Memphis to Jackson to Nashville, keeping everything snow. And that puts some mix into North Mississippi, North Alabama. Interesting to see that. That puts the heavy snow in very much the same places, though, too, into Kentucky, a good chunk of Tennessee heading into Wednesday, and then into Virginia, West Virginia. The European putting some snow into North Carolina, and it's interesting to see the freezing rain and the sleet showing up in the ice as far south as northern South Carolina. Now, the European has your upper low a little bit further to the east, and that wants to tug the low a little bit closer to the coast. However, I'll tell you, last night's European run also trying to keep the low just off the coast. I'm not sold exactly on how close this thing is to the coast just yet. We'll be watching it together, so I hope you'll subscribe and come back. These are your snow totals, the GFS. Look at where you are if you live somewhere here in the central and eastern U.S. to the European. This is last night's European. I'll go back one more time. You can see the comparison. Some of you have trended south, some of you have trended north, some of you have trended east. These models are going to waffle, I think, back and forth just a little bit. It's one of the reasons I do like to look at the blended guidance here, especially when you start to see such a model spread and kind of look at things that way. But it's interesting to see that last night's European run still trying to put almost 1.5 feet of snow here into southeast Virginia and close to 1 foot of snow across northern North Carolina up into Delaware and Maryland. This is using the Kuchera version of the European, which takes into account how fluffy the snow might be. If you flip it over to a simple 10-to-1 ratio, sometimes that still gives you an idea of what you're looking at. But, I mean, you're still talking about, even at a 10-to-1 ratio, 16 inches. And if it's a heavy, wet snow, you're still talking close to 1 foot of snow. So pretty wild to see that much data coming in for snow. Here's a closer look at timing some of that snow out. We'll start off across the Central Plains first as we head through Monday and Tuesday. Kind of quiet here, just some light snow starting to break out as we head into Monday. Some of that may streak as far east as Illinois, and then we get more energy moving in, and this is when your dynamics start to come together with your what we call synoptic snow, your large-scale weather feature-driven snow. Not that the other one wasn't. That streak there was definitely synoptic-driven. But this is when your strong dynamics come into play with your heavy snow moving east through the day, Tuesday into Wednesday, into Kentucky and further to the east. These are touched numbers now, okay? I've shown you some model blended data. These are the touch numbers from the National Weather Service. Now, the reason it falls off over toward Kentucky and Tennessee, we're just not close enough in time yet for these forecasts. But back into Missouri, these are numbers through Wednesday at 7 a.m. with close to 1 foot here across central Missouri, your 6-inch line all the way down to the Arkansas border, and then a couple of inches across northern Arkansas. A little bit further to the west, you can see that almost 1 foot of snow here in southeast Kansas. Back into central Kansas, those numbers drop down to less than 6 inches, but we're still talking about 2+ for a good chunk of the state, a good 2 to 5 inches anyway. And then you can see the purple, that's where we're looking at 6 inches of snow, and then a couple of inches here into northern Oklahoma as our model kind of cuts off here. I just want to show you Oklahoma just for kicks. You can get the idea that the snow down here, while it will be heavier into Kansas, there will be some snow down here into Oklahoma. It doesn't look like it gets very far south. I think you got to watch for some mix here too on the southern side of this from Oklahoma City east to Little Rock. If you flip a look over at the freezing rain potential, it's certainly showing up in their forecast data that's coming out. Almost 1/10 of an inch of ice in some areas of southeast Oklahoma over into Arkansas. Across the west, it's going to be a little bit rainy, a little bit snowy across the Pacific Northwest, and then we're going to see that calm down a little bit quieter as we head into now Tuesday and Wednesday. Our next system starts to push into the Pacific Northwest with another round of heavy rain and snow. It looks to be on the way sometime Wednesday evening into Thursday, and then that moves into the Intermountain West. The big story, though, I think this week will be the cold and the snow, and I'll keep tracking it. Look at this cold, though. As we head into Monday and Tuesday, this pushes pretty far to the south. You've got temperatures Tuesday morning that could be rivaling 30 below across parts of North Dakota, near zero all the way down into Kansas, and those near or below zero temperatures stick around for a few days, at least into the overnight and early morning hours, and really cold from Wisconsin all the way back to the Rockies as that chilly Arctic air builds in. We say goodbye to the relatively warm air across parts of the mid-Atlantic and the southeast, and we get that replaced with some really cold air, setting the stage for our next winter storm. Take a look at those cold temperatures setting up, and to the south, relatively warm on the southern side of this storm. And then as we head into Wednesday and Thursday, behind it, we get a good rush of cold air that pushes all the way down into the deep south, with temperatures I think the coldest morning could be maybe Friday morning in the Tennessee Valley. Temperatures in the single digits, down into the near below or below zero, back into parts of Missouri, Iowa, and north up into Wisconsin, and then heading into Friday. Some of that modifies as it heads east, but still, we're talking about some pretty cold temperatures Friday afternoon, highs in the teens and 20s as we get closer and closer to the end of February. All right, guys, thanks for enduring these videos on the road. I'll be back in the studio later today with a full update tonight. So if you've not subscribed, come back. New data's coming in. Hopefully we'll start to have a much clearer picture than we even have this morning, which arguably today is better than yesterday. See you next time.